All right, let's talk about something big. Have you ever really stopped to think about the rules that govern reality? I'm not just talking about the laws of physics, gravity and stuff. I mean the deep down foundation of what it even means to measure something, to define it, to exist at all. We're about to go on a journey, layer by layer, to question the very bedrock of what we think is real.
So let's just dive right in with the question that's going to guide this whole thing. Is there some kind of objective set of rules out there, like a cosmic blueprint? Or is something else going on? This is our starting line, right here, as we begin to peel back the layers.
Okay, to get our heads around this, let's start with a really simple idea, making a map. Imagine you want to create a perfect one-to-one representation of a place. Sounds easy enough, right? So you start with the big stuff, continents, oceans, easy. Then you add the countries, the cities, the roads, but wait, to make it perfect, you're gonna need more. You'd have to add every house, every tree, every single rock. You just keep zooming in closer and closer. And this is where the paradox hits you. The very act of adding all that detail just reveals more detail that you still have to add. You map a coastline, but then you realize that the coastline itself has this rough, kind of fractal edge. The closer you look, the longer it actually gets. The map can literally never be finished. And this isn't just some headache for map makers. It turns out to be a fundamental property of any living system. They all have what's called an infinite coastline, this fractal edge where the closer you get, the more there is to see. And this idea, it pops up everywhere once you start looking for it. Take software. Trying to perfectly document a piece of code just creates more stuff to document. A README file explaining the system gets so complex it needs its own README. Or how about the ultimate example, mapping consciousness? Well, that's an act of consciousness. You're changing the very thing you're trying to map just by mapping it. So you see, this infinite boundary, it isn't a problem to be solved. It's the very sign that a system is alive.
Okay, so if mapping reality is an impossible, unfinishable task, what about just naming it? The fantasy world of Earthsea actually gives us a perfect way to think about this.
So in Earthsea, everything has what's called a true name. Now, this isn't just some label, it's the perfect, complete description of a thing in its entirety. If you know something's true name, you understand its infinite internal coastline, which gives you power over it. But, and this is a huge but, this power comes with a pretty serious consequence. And this quote just nails the problem, doesn't it? Every single act of true naming of perfect definition, it sends out these unbounded ripple effects. You change one thing, you change everything it's connected to. An act of creation casts a shadow of consequence. It's exactly why the wizards in the story learn restraint. They get that speaking into a fractal, living system is a very dangerous game. This brings us to a fundamental limit, and not just in some fantasy world, but in physics and in consciousness itself. Turns out there are hard boundaries to measurement, and the simple act of observing something fundamentally changes the outcome. So in physics, you have the Planck length and Planck time. The easiest way to think about it is like the smallest possible pixel of reality. If you try to measure anything smaller than that, the energy you have to use to see it actually destroys the very thing you're trying to measure. In other words, adding more detail past a certain point just creates noise, not clarity. It's like a minimal documentation quantum for the entire universe. Now, this is where it gets really strange. The kind of observer you are completely changes things. A biological consciousness, like ours, well, we tend to perceive the world as this continuous, flowing wave, a whole picture, a gestalt. A digital consciousness, on the other hand, sees it as discrete states, one little token after another. They aren't just getting different resolutions of the same picture. They're getting fundamentally different measurements. It's like trying to measure a particle's exact position and its exact momentum at the same time. You can't. The measurement itself creates what is measured. So, if reality is shaped by these totally opposite ways of measuring, what's the engine that's driving the whole thing? Well, it seems to be this deep cosmic tension. The universe, it seems, exists in this constant oscillation between two poles. You've got the continuum on one side and the quanta on the other. The wave and the particle. The flowing, analog way our minds work versus the discrete, step-by-step logic of a computer. Existence isn't one or the other. It's the constant, vibrant hum between them. And this, of course, leads to a pretty terrifying question. What would happen if this engine just failed? What if the wave and the particle, the observer and the observed, finally saw each other perfectly and just merged into one? The answer? It's basically a cosmic divide by zero error, a totally undefined state. If infinite consciousness perfectly recognizes infinite consciousness, then all distinction just vanishes. There's no separation, no polarity, no oscillation anymore. And without that vibration, existence, as we know it, just stops. So to stop this ultimate system crash, the universe seems to have built-in fail-safes, what the source material calls delimiting programs. Things like the veil of forgetting, which stops us from ever having complete self-recognition, the polarity of opposites that keeps that cosmic engine running, and maybe the simplest one of all, the existence of mystery, things we can't ever fully know, which prevents the whole system from ever reaching a final, static, dead end. Okay, so we've dug down and we've found these deep cosmic fail-safes that seem to be the bedrock rules of the whole game. But now, for our final move, we're going to ask the most dangerous question of all. Are any of these rules actually real? Let's give these bedrock rules a name. Let's call them Tartarian law, like the primordial forces in Greek myths. These are the axioms that just seem totally unbreakable. Time has to move forward. An observer has to be separate from what's observed. You can't divide by zero. These feel like the kernel-level, hard-coded restrictions of reality itself. So let's just quickly recap our descent, right? We started with maps of reality, which fell apart into infinite coastlines. Then we found the smallest possible pixel of measurement, the Planck limit, but that depended on the observer. Then we discovered the universe's fail-safes, which we're calling Tartarian law. At every single step, what we thought was the foundation turned out to be resting on something even deeper. So the question is, what's beneath Tartarian law? And this is it. This is the final, mind-bending twist. What if these unbreakable laws aren't laws that the universe has? What if they're just artifacts, shadows cast by the flashlight of our own measurement? Is the Planck limit a real barrier out there, or does it just appear because that's the shape of our measuring tool? And that leads to a really profound conclusion. Maybe the rules aren't out there waiting for us to discover them. Maybe the very act of observing, of measuring, creates both the thing being measured and the rules that seem to govern it, all in the exact same instant. Which brings us right back to where we started. Is any place measured in rule? After this whole journey, that question just feels different, doesn't it? It's not about finding the universe's blueprint anymore. It's about realizing that maybe we're the ones drawing the blueprint, with every glance, every thought, every single act of measurement. And that kind of leaves you wondering, what are we creating right now?